Okay. Thank you all for coming. And in some ways, I should say, you should be here. This is about the L&D profession. And you should take at least some time in your busy lives to think about yourself, but also to think about what the L&D profession actually is and where it's going and the kinds of skills it requires as a profession in order to continue to move forward. So that's the shameless topic for today. It is all looking slightly inwardly on where L&D should be now and should be in the future, to place itself in the future. So thank you all for coming. I did the lunchtime session where we had, well, it was, if you think this is a lot, we had 7 around one table. So it's good to see a full room, I have to say, in the same room. So the way we're going to play it is this. I'm going to ask Vikki to speak first, then Michelle to speak second. I'll give a very brief introduction to both of them. After each person has spoken, if there are some burning questions related specifically to what either Vikki or Michelle has said, we'll ask questions directly. After that, we're going to talk more generically and begin the process of the bridge. And the bridge is, as Don explained it this morning, trying to make sure that every single session has at least 10 minutes asking the room to think about actions they can take, think about their learning, time to reflect, time for discussion on what you got from the session. Now, in the session that I ran this morning, as soon as the chair said, right, we're now going to go into the bridge, half the room got up and walked out. So we don't need to worry about that kind of stuff. Let me get my coffee. So I hope that you will give it a go. I think it's very useful just to quietly reflect on what you've heard. And it's quite useful to have permission to have that kind of conversation about what you're going to do and to share that around the group. So that is the purpose of the bridge. It's the first time it's ever been done at Learning Technologies. If at the end of each session, 3/4 of the people will leave the room, we won't be doing the bridge again. So I would love you to prove that the bridge is actually a really important part of the whole makeup of the session. So without further ado, I'll just introduce Vikki. Vikki was given, she was one of the Tech 50 nominees, awardees, I don't know what the word means, and whether she can put T50 after her name, I don't know about that either, but Vikki was one of the Tech 50 thinkers, and she's head of learning technologies at the Education and Training Foundation and had a career before that in FE. And she's a technology person. She focuses on how technology enables specifically creative industries and others, but also how learning technologies can enhance the learning process in vocational education. And if that's a mangled account of Vikki's bio, she can always come up. She has the floor and she will correct me. So Vikki's going to, about 20 minutes to talk about the FE and training sector. And Vikki, you have Learning Technologies 19 awaiting your performance.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I hope you've had a really stimulating morning so far. And I'm really pleased to be in front of you now. A bit intimidating. I didn't expect quite such a big room, but here we go. So let me take this and move on our first slide. So as Nigel has said, we're going to talk to you about the skills, tools, and mindset that we need to lead and develop. And the first part of my presentation is going to be about the Education and Training Foundation and what it is that we are. And then I'll give you a quick overview of the further education and training sector. And then we'll look at the skills of the modern L&D professional, the tools to support individual development, and how we're going to build a coherent profession within the sector I'm working with, essentially. But obviously, it's something you can reflect as part of the bridge within your own industry and organization. And hopefully, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session afterwards. So what is the Education and Training Foundation? Well, we are the government-backed, sector-owned national support body for the further education and training sector. And our mission is to work with teachers, trainers, leaders, governors, employers, in order to support them in delivering excellence within the sector. So, very often, we understand primary, secondary school because we've been there. We understand HE because, again, we've experienced it. But very often, further education, what's that? It's very great. So could you please go to menti.com. You can scan, get your phone out, guys, please, and scan and tell me. And you can see on the two sides here, we're going to be able to see what it is. Oh, some of you have already started. Well done. And see how many of you are familiar with the FE sector and what it is. It's actually quite a broad, very diverse and complex sector, very fragmented as well. And it's going to be interesting to see what it is that you think of it. Later on during the presentation, you're also going to be able to keep on using it to ask questions, and we'll come back to it at the end. So the two screens at each end of the conference are showing the results, and you can see them. They're moving as you're voting in. So it's a very useful tool to use and gauge an audience. Then we'll look at what it does encompass, and then any questions during the presentation. So I see that quite a few of you are already familiar with the further education sector. Well done. So I'll move on, and we can come back to that afterwards. And you've moved on as well. And here we were asking you, what training providers does it include? So for further, you've got quite a wide range here. So further education colleges, sixth form colleges, you're right. Some of you have included schools. No. Further education does not include school and does not include higher education. Well, higher education meaning universities. Higher level education is delivered through FE. But usually we're talking about a range of providers, such as charities, adult community learning. We're going to talk about further education colleges, sixth form colleges, third sector providers, employers, apprenticeships. So it's quite broad, as you can see. So if you go to the next slide, this is where you're going to be able to ask questions, and we'll collect all of those and try to answer them as we go along. Any other comments also is welcome. So what are the skills of the L&D professional? Well, I started in my role quite recently, about in January 2018. And the first thing I did when I started was to perform an in-depth positioning review in order to really understand the micro and the macro environments in which we were working. 3 key points came out of that. First of all, that there is a clear awareness that digital skills and technologies must be harnessed for the UK to remain a global leader. And this is evident in both literature, but also all across the board, to be honest. The second point was that diversity of the vocational and training sector was a real challenge to reach each education provider. And then the strategy as a third point must tackle the barriers to digital and the digital divide. So the second thing that I did, which was part in a way to that in-depth positioning review, was to review within my organization the power and belief system. I think this is a very powerful tool because very often an organization is going to say, well, I believe in innovation. Oh yeah, do you? And then what do you have in terms of ways of working where you're going to actually give this a meaning? So for instance, I'm thinking about an organization I'm not going to name who's giving 10% of their employees' time to innovate and then will reward failure. So if your project is actually not working, they're actually rewarding you for recognizing that fact. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? So here, this model, which is developed by Adrian Oberberg and Alison Ripple, look at the three power of meaning, processes, and resources across stories and symbols, ways of working, control systems, contracts and relationship, structural hierarchy, and power structure. And it is a very, very good model to look at the culture within your organization. The second thing, which is quite important for us as L&D professionals, is to wear different hats, who it is that we're talking to. So emotional intelligence is really so, so important, because people can say, yeah, Vikki, oh God, yeah, I'm really into that. And then really, if you really listen to what they're saying, intonation, behavior, you're going to realize that behind there's a real hidden agenda. So it's really important for us to be aware of the people's motivation and what makes them tick, really, so that it is easier to pull than to push, and you'll get better results as well. And again, as an L&D professional, it's always also important to keep an open mind. Because things change, and they change, as we know. I mean, we've heard Marcia this morning. We were in the emerging technologies session afterwards. Things change really fast, and we can't just expect that things it is that we were doing that were successful are going to be successful within a new organization or with a new target audience. So always be reflective and open to criticism, and be receptive to new opportunities, new ways of engaging your audience. Growth is about what it is that we do, and we believe in being creative and problem solvers. And, of course, adaptable, flexible, and agile. So finally, I would say that whatever it is that you're doing needs to be to engage your user and to adopt a user-centered design process, because otherwise you're unlikely to shift behaviors, because that's what we want to do when we do a training. Training can be enjoyable, but if it doesn't shift behavior, if it doesn't affect people, employees within the work life, it's not going to make any difference. So the tools to support individual development. I'm sure you're all familiar with this infographic by Bursin for Deloitte. And it's really showing us that we've moved into a mindset of immediacy. We want to find out something, we Google it. We want to get a cab, we Uber it. We want things to happen just in time. We've got very little, we can be distracted very quickly, but we love working in collaboratively. So those things are quite important. And that's why tools to support the modern learners need to be just in time, respond to just in time self-identified learning needs. They need to be mobile first and to be adaptive and responsive to any device, wherever. Accessible, of course, and support accessibility and collaborative, so promote a sort of community of practice. And then it needs to be multimedia, because if you just have text, people won't engage as much. So it's really important to have a range of media to engage your audience, and also their ability to capture what it is that they're doing in terms of evidence. I'm thinking apprenticeship, for instance, with voice, text, memos, videos, pictures. And also, it needs to be friction-free. So what does it mean? Well, it's really, you don't need to log on. You access, because if it takes you 5 minutes to log on, well, you're gone. You're never coming back there. So that free access and friction-free is really important. For me, as an individual, as an LD professional like you, I really like social media, as Twitter, LinkedIn, of course, communities of practice and networking opportunities, as well as events such as this one, discussion forums online, and specialist literature, of course, and news. So let me tell you how we're trying to build a coherent profession in the further education sector with a digital teaching professional framework and enhance. So why develop a digital teaching professional framework? Well, first of all, as I mentioned earlier on, and you've seen in the graph that you've done on Mentimeter, the further education sector is extremely fragmented, diverse, and complex. But what we need is to make sure that we've got a common language of what it is that it means to embed EdTech in your pedagogic approach. It's also providing a clear development pathways for educators and improve their capabilities of using new tech to enhance the quality of teaching, learning, and assessment. And then, of course, because that's what we want ultimately, it's to improve the learning experience and the learners' employability outcomes so that they become lifelong learners, so that when they move from the education sector into the place of work, they will continue to engage and learn, because that's where we're going with change. We need to all engage with learning. So this is the Digital Teaching Professional Framework. It was a partnership with JISC, which is also government-backed. And it's based on 7 competencies which are aligned to the teacher's journey. However, it's not meant to be taken in a linear manner. It's more like a butterfly. You pick up what it is that you need when you need it. It's based 3 stages across each of the competencies. Stage 1, about exploring. It's about being curious, about trying to open your mind to possibilities. The second one, stage 2, is adopting. So it's starting to embed technologies within your delivery. And the third stage is really about leading. It's about critiquing, looking at EdTech or resources, and looking at what learning context is going to be most beneficial for. So if you want to access all these various documents, you'll be able to access it on our website at etfoundation.co.uk/edtech, or scan the QR code. I'm seeing some of you are scanning. So OK, so having said that, loads of frameworks have been developed in the past. In fact, our framework is building from the 6 elements of digital capability from JISC, the professional standards from the Education and Training Foundation, and the European Commission DG competency framework for educators. And most of them are really focusing on digital skills. Instead, what we wanted to do is to look at this commonality across all the further education sector, across all the providers, which is pedagogy. And therefore, we've applied a teaching and learning lens to the framework so that people, we want to remove barriers, really. It's about pedagogy first, remove the technophobia element. It was also developed in a very close consultation with the sector, with 5 levels of consultation. And finally, it's not just a framework that you're going to pin on a wall, which is static up there, that you refer to it occasionally. It's a dynamic framework. And it has come live at BETS on the 25th of January. And with Enhance, sorry, I've got to pronounce it right, the digital teaching platform. And Enhance is a professional development interface, which is underpinned by the framework. And it consists of a comprehensive suite of online bite-sized training modules with a badge recognition structure. So as I said before, it's mobile first. We've got an optional sign-up. So if you sign up, you're going to have a more personalized learning experience, and it's going to develop after that. But it's free access to all. So go for it. And user-centered, as I said, bite-sized module, pedagogy first, inclusive. And gamification added to it to keep the motivation going and also to recognize progress and development across the 3 levels, exploring, adopting, and leading. And we're developing now communities of practice. But let me show you a little video.
Welcome to the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform from the Education and Training Foundation, ETF. ETF's Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform is designed to help develop your teaching and training practice using technology. It gives you free, bite-sized online training modules, and as you complete modules, you can collect digital badges for achievement. As you can see, the platform has a friendly and clear feel with a simple navigation menu. When you scroll down, you can see rows of training modules in sliding menus, the most popular first, then new and updated modules. Once you have registered, you will see a third slider that will be personalized to you. The Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform is adaptive and responsive, which means that the layout will flow and adapt to whatever screen you are using. Let's look at the training modules in a bit more detail. You'll see that each module is related to a category and has a star rating. As you scan the modules, you can add them to your wish list. When you click on a module, you can find the aims and objectives. Each module is 5 to 6 minutes in length and includes an intro, a video or animation, a learning activity, a reflection, a summary, further resources. Each module also has a color code which appears in a thin line below the icon image. The color coding relates to 3 stages of personal development which the modules are organized around. Now, let's explore the navigation menu at the top. Firstly, My Learning. This shows the modules that you have completed or that are in progress, and the digital badges that you have earned or partially completed. Badges are awarded for each of the 3 stages: exploring, adopting, and leading. They are portable, and you can use them on your CV or LinkedIn profile. Then, categories. Modules are clustered together into topics, and this submenu shows the topic headings that modules are grouped under. You can see more information about the service in the More section, including more information about modules and badges, and a frequently asked questions section. The toggle allows you to adjust the background theme on the site as indicated. Lastly, there is Login and finally Sign Up. You do not have to sign in to use Enhance, but registering for an account will enable you to save and track your progress, collect digital badges, and enjoy a more personalized experience. It's as easy as that. We look forward to welcoming you to ETF's Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform.
So that's Enhance, and it's given you an overview. You can access it here by scanning the QR code, and it's enhance.etfoundation.co.uk. And that's it. So most of the images have been sourced, and I've used pacsource.com, which is a great free stock photos bank. So use it if you're not familiar with it, especially in education. It's extremely practical. Thank you very much. If you have any questions and you want to take those questions outside of this room, here are my contact details.
Vikki, could you just go back to the Enhanced slide? Go back 2 slides so that if people want to get access, leave that there. So
oh, cool.
Capture that.
Thank you.
We've had a couple of comments on...
Oop.
I can't remember. Yeah, there we go. We've had a couple of comments about
You're too quick for us.
It's all right, don't worry.
Thank you.
And the first one is, what is what you're doing different to programs of the past? E.g., 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 and E.g. So what distinguishes what you're doing now? What makes it different?
Okay. Basically, we're building from what has been done in the past, and we're making it micro-learning, bite-sized, just in time. We're trying to adopt a different approach, and as I said early on, the difference between what was done with, for instance, ELSIS and the action groups and the previous framework is that they were static and you needed to go back into them through text. What we're doing is that we're breaking those competencies into bite size that you can just access as you need it, and you've got a more dynamic experience through it. And also what we're doing is that we're developing a community of practice, which is what we're going to start doing over the months to come.
Just, can I ask one more question? If anyone's got a burning question, I'll suspend mine and get one from the room. Well, my question is, very simply, do you think there is complete alignment between what someone does in an FE college and what someone does in a company? Do you think L&D is a profession that crosses those boundaries, the institutional and corporate boundaries, or do you think there are big differences?
Well, to be honest with you, we all need to adapt to the culture and the industry in which we work. Otherwise, we're not responsive to our audience. So it's really important, even within one organization, if you need to deliver a training within a week, depending on who it is within the organization, you're going to adopt different tools. I think what we've got in common is that we've got those little antennas, that we all sort of capture what is going on. We try to support people and we believe in collaboration, and that in itself is remarkable.
Okay, thank you. We're going to stop there. We've run out of time. So, Vikki, thank you very much
You're
for your
welcome.
presentation. And we'll have time at the end to discuss more generally and generically about the L&D profession. Now I'm going to hand over to Michelle Ockers. Michelle is from Sydney, Australia. She's come a long way to be here. So be very, very nice to her. Michelle has a background in corporate learning. When I first knew her, she worked for Coca-Cola Amatil in Sydney, Australia. Now she's an organisational learning strategist, so she has her own organisation, doing a really interesting job in that interface between organisational development and learning. It's a really important area, and a lot of people have been very, very interested in the work that she's doing with companies, mostly at the moment all over Australia, but all over Australia. So, Michelle, thank you very much indeed for talking to us today.
Thank you,
I hand it to you, and I'll keep an eye on the time for you, and then we'll move from you into maybe specific questions related to your talk, and then more generic ones about the profession.
Great,
That's
thank
okay.
you. And I have a question for the bridge as well.
Good. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. The bridge will be very pleased.
Good. So perhaps to expand a little bit on Vikki's response to your question about, what's the commonality between the L&D profession in the FE sector and in the organisational learning sector, which is where I'm squarely going to be talking about. I think we all operate in the context of today's world, and the people who are coming through the further education sector are either moving into organisations or are moving between the two sectors, and some of the challenges of that context are very similar. Vikki's talk is very much about digital, and as we'll look at, we have some challenges in learning and development with our digital skills and our ability to support people to learn in a digital world. So I think there is some commonality, and some of the tools that Vikki shared are relevant to learning and development. I'm going to cover three things. I'm actually going to start with a question around, is L&D a coherent profession? And in fact, I'm going to challenge you to do some thinking and to be quite candid around the question of, is L&D actually a profession at all? And we're going to explore that first. Then we're going to look at mindset as part of that and move on to what are the skills that are needed for a modern L&D practitioner and a modern L&D team. And then we'll share some development tools and resources. And I've been doing a little bit of crowdsourcing around that, which I'm continuing to build on. So you'll have a whole suite of crowdsourced resources that you can pull on for your development. And this is really about your development and the development of our profession is where I'm focused. The bridge is all about this idea of building a community of supportive professionals and how can we do that better. So let's start with the question of not just is L&D a coherent profession, but is L&D actually a profession? I've pulled this definition from the Australian Council of Professionals. The highlights are mine. I'd like you just to take a moment to have a think about not only your own practice and the practice of your teams, but some of the other L&D practitioners you've come across, and ask yourself the question, do we meet these characteristics of a profession? Quick show of hands, who thinks, if you look broadly at us as a group, that we meet these characteristics of a profession? Who thinks we don't? Who's undecided? Yeah, I'm going to explore a couple of these. My view is that we're very fractured, that the standards are very variable across the profession, and like that so many of you are here, you're at the conference anyway. I'm assuming you guys are on the end that's probably operating in the more professional band of what it means to work in learning and development. And that, I think, places some responsibilities on us as people operating in a profession or an area that we really care about, and we want to lift the standards as a whole because we care about the profession, but also because it helps us to do a better job as individuals within the whole industry. So let's first take a look at the question of ethical standards. You know, to be ethical means to operate with integrity and to do good and not harm. This was the start of a recent rant from Shannon Tipton on Twitter, which was triggered by a specific incident which I won't go into. But it touches on the question of learning myths and the fact that there are still people out there operating in learning and development who are using myths, who are using things that have been debunked, easy shortcuts in their thinking to actually make decisions which can be harmful to the individuals we're there to serve and to our businesses. To the point where, you know, as recently as last year, Clark Quinn published a book debunking learning myths, and it's not the first book. So it's still something we're challenged with in our practice as a profession. What about the question of a body of learning derived from research? There is stacks of good quality research available and accessible to us as learning and development profession or industry these days. These are just some of the sources, and I'll make sure they're on the compiled resources I'm going to share out of this session. How many of us actually make the effort to stay up to date with research? Fantastic. There's a show of hands there. Thank you for your candour. I wasn't actually expecting a show of hands. I appreciate that. Some of you will be familiar with the work, the research that Towards Maturity do. They are, by the way, just a reminder, they're launching their 2019 research report. 700 L&D professionals completing their health check benchmark have contributed to that particular report. That's being launched at 5 p.m. today in the Platinum Suite. The data there shows that 34% of the people who have actually used the health check, so they're probably on the upper end of people who are interested in professional standards, only 34% are keeping up to date with the latest research. So 66% of us aren't making the time and effort and putting the energy into keeping up to date with the research and ensuring it's informing our practice. In terms of education and training at a high level, there is stacks of this available, right? There are certificates, there's graduate courses, there's master's courses, you can do PhDs. So it's not that we don't have education and training available at a high level. However, the barriers to entry are very low to move into learning and development. We're not like the medical profession or the legal profession where we're regulated and you have to meet certain criteria to move into learning and development. And you know, the fact that Cami Bean can publish a book called The Accidental Instructional Designer tells us something, that people move into learning and development all the time from other areas, often without the benefit of training, qualifications, being exposed to the body of research that is available. And I'd like you to start thinking now, to prepare for the bridge, what can we then do as people who are working in this industry, where people are moving into the industry without a background, without a grounding? What responsibility or opportunity does that place on us as professionals who care about our work and the impact of our work in organisations? Why do people take shortcuts? Why do people keep using learning myths? Why do people grab onto things that have intuitive appeal? This is from John F. Kennedy in his Yale commencement address in 1962, which is some time ago. But I think he summarises that we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. And I think, you know, that Burson graphic that was shown before about, you know, the modern learner and the mindset of immediacy, I think that's actually done a fair bit of damage. Because it perpetuates this grabbing onto something that is intuitively appealing and starting to apply it without questioning and investigating. We know a lot more now than we did in 1962 about the cognitive shortcuts people take and the traps we fall into with our decision making and our practice. You know, the field of behavioural economics has lent a lot to our understanding there, and yet it's very easy to take these shortcuts. So in terms of being coherent then, I'd like to tackle this from two dimensions. And one is this question of, do we make sense? Are we logical? Are we rational? Are we cogent? And by that I mean, do we make sense in the context of the world that we live and work in? Do we make sense in our businesses? Do we speak a language that they understand, and is our contribution one that they can look at? And yeah, I can see why these people are working in my organisation and the contribution they make to me. And then there's the question of, are we a unified industry and a unified profession? And I'll pick up on both of those. This question of do we make sense? I think that gets into mindset in part as well, and I want to explore mindset before moving on to skill set. By proxy, I'm going to draw on some of the research from Towards Maturity to explore the kind of mindset shifts that we need to make in order to truly make sense in the industrial world, the organisational world in which we move. Some of you will be familiar with their annual report from last year. I'm not going to try to unpack the research methodology or fully go through what this maturity curve means. I will talk to it, but you can certainly download that transformation curve report yourself or come along to the 2019 report launch to learn more about the work they do. But essentially, the research report they did last year looked at what differentiates people operating at different stages of maturity, and they use a maturity index in their research based on people completing a health check. And they looked at those who are getting better organisational results, those who are impacting the organisation more effectively, who operate up at that top decile, the top 10% of organisations getting impact. And they found they're 3 times more likely to achieve business results than those down in that first stage of maturity. And they've been looking at what do you need to do to move from one stage to the next? What brings success? What are the benefits? And then potentially, what do you need to let go of? So they've found that maturity is not a straight line. And in fact, it's more like a series of product S-curves where you get to the top of a stage and you're achieving benefits. But in order to move on, you need to pivot. You need to let go of some of the things you've been doing. And there's a mindset shift that's required to move to the next stage and to start having a bigger impact on our businesses, and I would suggest to make more sense in the context of our organisations. Now, I've unpacked that using their 2018 report. This is my analysis of their report, if you like, so it's a little bit meta. But some of the key shifts in mindset that their data highlights as you move from that optimising training, the first quartile of people who are getting results in the organisation up to those that are having the most impact. We're moving from training to enabling learning. We're moving from delivery first to focusing on business performance first, from control and ownership to letting go and sharing responsibility with individuals, with managers and leaders in the organisation. And in terms of the way we view the people in organisations we're there to serve and to help them to do their work better, we need to move from seeing them as recipients of learning, recipients of training, to connected contributors. And for ourselves, moving beyond fear of rejection to the courage and confidence to have the kind of conversations we need to make to open up the space to make a bigger contribution and make more sense in organisations. Having looked at mindset, I want to move on to, and you'll see some linkages here as we talk about having impact in organisations and what are the kind of skills that we need to operate effectively as modern learning and development professionals. I did a piece of work last year with the Learning and Performance Institute where I led a refresh of their capability map. As part of my initial research on that, I started looking at what other skill frameworks are there out there for learning and development. I stopped at 6. There are a lot more out there. And that's part of our challenge as a coherent profession is there's no one place we can go to say this is the skill set we need in learning and development. When I compared some of these frameworks, there's quite a degree of commonality, but what I notice is those that were developed or refreshed more recently, there's a couple of key shifts that I see in them. One is this shift to performance and impact and a much sharper focus on business performance. Setting ourselves up right from the start to work on things that we think are going to have an impact in the business and then being able to measure and demonstrate and have conversations with the business about performance. And the second one is the area of support learning. And moving to a position where we're supporting more continuous learning in the workplace. And that's a whole new mindset and set of skills for us. That idea of moving from individuals as recipients of learners to individuals as connected contributors, and individuals as being able to continuously learn as lifelong learners and building that skill set to support them. I'm going to talk to the LPI Capability Map because A, that's the one I know best, B, it's the one that's most recently been refreshed, and C, it has some great self-assessment tools that you can use to have a look at where is your skill set at the moment as an input to your development planning. So the way we approach refreshing that capability map, we put together initially a steering committee and then working groups. So we had over 50 leading practitioners and L&D thought leaders from around the world working on this. So there's some of those in the room today. Just hand up if you were involved. I know Nigel Payne, Miriam Nealon, we've got Don Taylor at the back. So we had over 50 people, and the first thing we asked the steering committee is what is changing in the world of work today that is impacting the task and the skills that learning and development need. And that the capability map hadn't been refreshed in 6 years, and what we discovered was a lot had changed in that 6 years, and we expect that's going to keep accelerating, and we need to update that capability map a lot more frequently than every 6 years. It just won't keep us up to date. You can read some of these trends for yourself, and they will all feel familiar to you. And I'm sure if I asked for a poll, everyone would say, yep, I'm experiencing that, I'm facing that. What that means is there's new tasks for learning and development, tasks we wouldn't have been talking about 4, 5, 6 years ago. Tasks like performance consulting, like curation, like managing learning technologies. So then we went on and asked the question, in order to perform these new tasks and be effective in today's world with these kind of trends and challenges, what skills do we need? And we came up with a list of 25 skills. Some of those were updates from what was already in the capability map. There are a couple of brand new skills in there. Data analytics was a new skill in there. And I think if you're familiar with some of the work Don Taylor has done around his annual sentiment survey and heard him talking, data analytics has really become a key opportunity. And I'm going to say opportunity rather than issue, because I think it is a big opportunity for us to more effectively respond to that challenge around business performance and impact and have the right kind of conversations with the business. But we've got 25 skills divided into 5 categories that form the LPI capability map. Each of those is defined at 4 levels of proficiency. Now, data, I'll go back so I don't confuse you too soon. There have been 800 self-assessments done against the refreshed capability map, and in time the data set will build up to the point where we can start looking at what is that telling us about where we're strongest, where we've got the most opportunity, patterns potentially against job roles and so on, but it's a little bit too early to pull that data and use it. So what I've done is, again, this is from the New Towards Maturity report. Don't try to get your head around the detail. You can get this particular graph in the Transformation Journey 2019 report. There's a URL there. You can download it directly from the Towards Maturity report. And there's a whole chapter in that report about L&D readiness, which I think you'll find very helpful. A couple of key patterns I just want to point out in this data. So this is from 700 L&D leaders over a 12-month period from June 2017 forward. The blue is the level to which the L&D leaders responding are saying this particular skill is important. So 94% are saying digital content development is an important skill for us to have. The purple says this is where we think we've actually got the skill in place. And really interestingly, these red stars you see show what the responses were, where that purple was in 2016. So relative to the skill level we think we need, here's where we are today. And you can see that those purple bars are lower than the red stars for many skills. What that is saying is that we think we are struggling to keep up, that our skills aren't developing quickly enough for where we need to be, and that we've gone backwards relative to where we need to be in the last 2 years. So some of the key skill gaps, those where relative to where we need to be, we're at sort of 35% or under. Some of the things that we saw in the trends and what's changing, the performance consulting, data analytics, supporting performance, and the technical design and delivery skills, those kind of digital skills which Vikki spoke about as being important to build in the FE sector. They're also skills that we are struggling with in the organisational learning sector. So the question then becomes, well, how the hell do you figure out of all of those skills? There's a lot of them there, right? No one person can have all of those skills, and in fact many small L&D teams are going to struggle to put all of those skills in place. So partnering with other parts of the business or external organisations to boost our skill set is becoming more important, and kind of orchestrating success with other partners is something we need to be thinking more about. But how do you figure out which of those skills you need to develop for the tasks you've got coming up in your organisation and for your strategy? Well, the answer is there is a tool that can help you to figure that out, and that is the LPI Capability Map. You can go and do a free self-assessment. So you can log in. That remains your data, even if you do it as part of an organisational initiative. It's your data. You can continue to update that for the rest of your career. Sorry, I was a bit quick there. I'll just go back. You can search on LPI Capability Map and you will be taken to this particular tool as well. And you can download a full PDF guide to the capability map there. So you get taken to a platform, basically the 25 skills. There's a full description at all 4 levels. If you do this, I'm going to encourage you to take your time with it, because your perception of what some of these skills mean might be different to the way they've been described by the working groups who've updated these skill sets. It'll probably take you to do it properly, I reckon, about 45 minutes to really do the thinking about where is my skill and which of these are important to me moving forward, which do I most need to develop. The other thing that's available, it is a paid service through the LPI, is a team capability assessment. And the thing I really like about this, I've done a couple of these in Australia with teams. It starts not by asking where are your current skills, but it starts by working with the L&D leader and perhaps some other people, key people on the team, to say, where do you need to be in 12 to 18 months, given your strategy and what you need to deliver on in 12 to 18 months, and then allows you to do a comparison and then prioritise and look at what do you need to develop in your team. So that kind of thinking is important for you to be doing. It's not just where am I at now, but what's important into the future. So what? So you do your assessment, then what? Well, the answer is there's no easy answer and there's no one place to go to. I am doing some crowdsourcing, so if you haven't seen this already, this link, you can add resources. I'll do a bit of a tidy up before the end of the week and then make that publicly available to share. But there are a stack of resources available, but you have to do some investigation, right? You have to develop your own continuous learning skills to dig this out and to find resources. So hopefully this will help people to more easily find some resources. The other thing I'm going to encourage you to do, though, we always think about resources as courses, as online tools, as assets. As continuous learners, as the people who should be modelling continuous learning in our organisations, I'm going to encourage you to think about how you can leverage and learn from your own experiences more effectively. We all have experiences. The degree to which we learn from them varies depending on how intentional we are about setting objectives to learn from those experiences and having a reflective practice. And also, who are the people you can connect and engage with in networks in order to continue your own development. And I have asked for, on that Padlet board, for people to put down who they follow, who they find valuable to learn from, what groups they're part of that perhaps they can learn from. So that brings us to the question of a community of support. You want me to go back again? Sorry, I'm conscious of time as well. I'm probably a minute or two over. I'm okay? No, you're okay. I feel like I'm racing a little bit. Yeah. There's a big conversation to be had around this, right? So in terms of a community of supportive professionals, you know, if the assumption I'm working on that we in the room care about professional standards in the industry, and that we're all here at the conference and as part of this conversation because we want to continue to develop ourselves professionally and the teams we work with, I'm not going to give you an answer to this, what do we need to do to develop a community of supportive professionals. This becomes part of the bridge. So my question for us to discuss as part of the bridge, and hopefully if we've got time to get some feedback, is what can we each do to help build a more coherent L&D profession?
If indeed you think that's desirable.
Well, yeah, I've made an assumption there is a desirable. Yeah, okay.
And would you do that just on your tables, so you can have a chance to talk to each other?
Just in sort of 2s or 3s, and that can be what can you do at an individual level, what can you do in connection with others, perhaps as communities you're part of, that are doing something or could be doing something further around lifting the professional standards and the development of us as a professional body?
Go for it. We've got 20 minutes left. 10-2. Hi. Hello. My friend Richard Kalata stands on a table in a room and he doesn't say a word and it just silences the room in 3 seconds. I'm a little bit too scared that if I stood on that table, A, would it collapse, and B, would I be able to get off again? So I'm on a chair, but it worked. Okay, let's get some feedback. Maybe if you're giving feedback, you formulate some of it into a question. If you've got a question for either Vikki or Michelle in your discussion, then we can build in a little bit of Q&A. But let's just hear from you. Let's pick a good, interesting top table like this one over here and ask what your conclusion, what were you talking about? Did you agree that it is a coherent profession and we should be helping each other?
What struck us from what Michelle was saying is this importance of self-reflection and learning from what we've done and how we did it. And I realized that in my organization we have a team of L&D professionals and we don't do that enough, if at all. And we plow on from one project to another without sparing a moment of thought to, okay, are we actually doing the right thing? What can we learn from what we've done? So I think overall as a profession, it would probably be useful if we were honest and open about the work that we do on a wider forum as well, to share those lessons.
And also, if you do it internally, it's easier to do it externally. It's no big deal. Southwest Airlines, the learning team in Southwest, every quarter they have a session which is, the agenda is, what are you hearing? What are you learning? What should we be aware of? That's all it is. That's the agenda. And if there's stuff that people are generally interested in, they'll dispatch 1 or 2 members of the team to find out more. And they come and report back to the next one. So they do that rigorously every quarter, and they take 3 hours or something to go through all of those issues for exactly that reason, because they lose touch with each other and someone knows something and the others should have known it and they didn't, and their mistakes are made. You don't leverage the insight of the team. So that's one example, very simple, straightforward example from an organisation.
Is my mic on? Is my mic on?
It should be.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know who listens to the Good Practice podcast regularly. They always have a segment at the end of the Good Practice podcast, What I Learned This Week. And there's some of the teams I work with, I encourage them just to add that question to their standard weekly team meeting agenda. What did I learn this week? And to quickly go around the room, because it keeps people mindful of their own learning and gives them an opportunity to share what they're learning from either what they're working on or a resource or a conversation they've had. It's really powerful as a simple practice. It doesn't have to be a big deal to be reflecting.
It's habit.
Yeah.
It's just getting in the habit
Yeah.
of reflecting and thinking, I should share that.
Yeah.
And we don't have that habit generally.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Okay, let's go over to the other side of the room. And I'm going to bravely try and navigate these tables, appallingly. So, broken ankles, trodden on bags, you forgive me already, I know. What about this table over here? What were you talking about? What was interesting? Any point you want to share? I know you do, but I fight for who's going to do it. Who's going to do it?
I feel like I hijacked the conversation here. That's why they're all putting me saying, you know, something to say. So this isn't looking to be deliberately provocative, but one thing that struck me, 2 really thought out presentations and then really interesting conversations and topics. But what place these type of frameworks in a VUCA world, notionally, I understand the benefit around trying to create some rigor around the framework, around a skill set, and raise that barrier to entry in the best spirit of it for the L&D profession. But at the same time, I feel this kind of quandary around what value to these that really well thought out frameworks that come out every year. And, you know, and the environments and organisations we're working in don't, you know, but they're working in minutes and hours, and we're talking weeks and months. Just as a thought, I don't have an answer necessarily, but that was something that's kind of I was torn with as I was listening to what was being discussed.
I think they, I mean, I'm happy to
I
provide a quick
was
response
going to throw it
to
straight
that.
back to you, and also to Vikki as well, because I think that's really important. Why bother building something that is kind of obsolete as soon as it's finished? So,
Well,
answer.
you build them so they're not obsolete as soon as they're published. So I know with the LPI Capability Map, we were very conscious of having something that reflected the skills of today and worked for people who were sort of maybe doing things a bit more traditionally, but also help prepare for the future. And so there were hooks there. You have to maintain these frameworks, obviously. But a lot of the work I do with professional development of teams and individuals, I talk about directional goals rather than smart goals. So it's about having a sense of direction and having a feel for what skills should I be developing and what direction is the industry heading in, so that you've got something to move towards. If you have nothing to move towards, the frameworks give us some sense of what the hell is going on and what's important in our profession. So they're like a quicker way to answer that question than having to do a whole stack of primary research yourself.
It's a bit of scaffolding, in other words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
Vikki,
you, Nigel.
why are you doing it?
Yeah, well, in the further education and training sector, there are about 146,000 trainers and educators out there. As I said, it's a very complex sector, so reaching out is difficult, and that's why we've got this framework, which we hope is going to have a bit of a lifespan because it's focused on the pedagogic approach in embedding technology, not on the digital skills itself, which in itself doesn't last because it moves, you know, the pace of change moves so fast. So we hope that that common understanding will make a difference to the sector, and obviously having a dynamic framework which underpins micro-learning content will also support the trainers in the sector. And again, we're constantly responsive to their needs and their feedback. So if quite a few of you, I was really surprised, actually understand TFE and training sector. So do try it. Tell us what you think, and we will adapt and develop it. We've got a plan of another 2 years of developing it. So please get engaged and tell us how to.
Okay, let's pick this table here, though. It's burning to say something. So. Not you, Rob.
Confidence and courage.
I would mean I'd have to pronounce your
Confidence and
name.
courage.
That would be too hard for me. Okay. Thank you very much.
We talked about that. It's actually thank you. It's very important for us to business partner the organisations we work for us to be credible and be seen as an actual profession. So we were talking about making sure that we're aligned to their organisational objectives, but also, you know, when we're often approached to say, I need training, training's the answer, to have some performance consulting skills to really get to the root cause, is that the right answer? Be guided by us, start those evaluation measures from the very start as well. And I think building the profile, certainly my organisation, we struggle with a bit of that. We're the department that's told to do the training and roll it out. So I think that would make us more coherent if we were more aligned to our business.
Yeah, if we understood the business better and what was important to the business, and going out, getting out of our little bubble in learning and development, going out and spending time building relationships in the business. Yeah, partnering with them is perfect.
It's a very simple agenda. It's a very simple agenda. It's getting too cozy on this table. Right. Is there anyone that, I haven't exactly covered the room, not everyone has had a chance to speak, but is there anyone who's got a really big point that they want to make and say, you know, really, you're not letting me get my word in edgeways? Is there anyone who wants to add something now? Take the microphone for just a second. We've got about 6 minutes left. Yes? Good. Thank you. Could you say who you are as well?
Yes, my name is Katrina Burns. I work at Tetra PAC in the learning and development. So we actually had a team meeting the other day for one of our faculties, and we're discussing, you know, learning and development, because that's the name also of the organization. So we said we think we need to change that, because it's not only about learning, it's learning and organizational development. Because if we do that, if we discuss with the business, you know, where they want to go, what's their desired state, there are a number of things that need to come in place. And it's not only about, you know, training will do the job, or this will do the job. It's all these other things. So if you get into that discussion, you become relevant to the business.
Absolutely. I've seen organisations where sort of the learning and development team and the organisational development team are almost in competition with each other, particularly for ownership of top talent development. But, you know, the agenda that the organisational development team has is very aligned with the agenda that learning and development has. And I'm starting to see more movement, more integration. And I've worked with some teams that are, like yourselves, L&OD teams. And there's a lot we can learn. And I know Towards Maturity in their latest report have drawn on a lot of organisational development principles and looking at how we can apply them in learning and development.
It's also about looking upwards.
Yeah.
That you can bury yourself down and see that every problem has a learning solution. That's absolutely not true. And you'll never make effective learning in an organisation that is hostile to the kinds of principles around which learning is built, like taking time off, reflection, all of those things. So I think everybody has to begin to build the organisation and develop, and maybe be the guardian of the organisational culture in order to make learning entirely effective. So I think that was an excellent point, a really good point. So have we got one last comment? And then I'll ask a final question of our two speakers, and then we'll finish. Has anyone got any point they'd like to make? You want to make a point? See? It's easy. Don't touch my eye.
We were just talking about, I was just saying that when we were working on the LPI Capability Map, that we all kind of realized, I think, that within the profession itself, there are many buckets of expertise. And I think we don't necessarily realize that very often, and we definitely don't benefit from each other's expertise. I think we have a tendency to think that we have to know it all and do it all, and it's just too broad, like think learning analytics, think learning sciences, think communities of practice, think e-learning development. I can go on and on and on, but it's areas of expertise in themselves, and I think we need to become more conscious of that as well.
Yeah, and finding that expertise wherever it lives, be it in IT, be it, you know, in marketing and communications, developing more partnerships and working more collaboratively in consultation with others across the organisation. We don't own learning by a long stretch. Yeah, we're there to orchestrate it.
Absolutely. Final question then to both of you. Start with you, Vikki. Vikki, one tip for the people in the room. There are people, I think everyone in this room understands the need to move themselves and with it their profession, whether that's in inverted commas or not, forward. Give everyone, what would be your tip? Where do we start? What would be a great thing to do?
Well, I think in order to learn, you need to observe and to take in and combine ideas and motivate people. I think it's really about motivation and understanding how to support each individual and each group, really. So
it's not about you, it's about the organisation. Just the conversation before.
Oh, the organisation. Well, there are many barriers to learning. You've mentioned time, you haven't mentioned technophobia, confidence. There's tons of barriers, but there are also a lot of enablers. And for instance, in the further education and training sector, we're starting an OTLA, for those of you who are familiar with our projects, an OTLA project on staff-students partnership, where students are mentoring teachers so that they get the support just in time in the classroom and build their confidence. So after the training, very often people won't apply because they're sort of intimidated, and that gives them that sort of initial step. So it's finding ways around.
Good. Michelle.
Be the learner that you would like to be supporting.
Yes.
It all starts with us.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. See ourselves as learners, not enough people who
That's
are
right.
involved.
And how can we expect others to respond to what we're asking them to do, to be reflective, to be curious, to be resourceful, if we're not doing that for ourselves? It all starts with us.
Yeah. Good. All right. That's an excellent point to stop. So thank you all for coming. I hope that was a useful session. Very well facilitated by Vikki and Michelle. And thank you for staying with us. Thank you for having what seemed like really interesting discussions around the room. And I apologise that we couldn't get round to more of you. But I hope it's useful. Enjoy the rest of the conference. You've got a big break now to go and reflect and work out your action plan. Thank you very much. Bye.